Providence, noun, divine guidance or care. Merriam-Webster. Racon loaded the last stone onto the cart from his grandfather's field. His hands covered in dirt and calluses ached. He had spent the entire summer walking through this field, pulling out rocks, loading them on the cart, so the plow wouldn't hit them in the spring when his grandfather planted again. What a job! And finally, he finished it. Racon had just turned 15 and was looking forward to using the plow soon, but his grandfather said he had to build muscles and the best way was to clear out the rocks. How many rocks had he picked? He had created 10 piles at the north end of the field. Thousands of rocks, he guessed. Racon tugged on the rope, and the old horse begrudgingly started pulling the cart. The sun was high and hot. The horse walked slowly, and Racon didn't mind. Finally, they reached the piles, and Racon tossed the rocks, making it a few inches higher. He didn't know it yet, but his grandfather was planning to build a fence with them, and Racon was a key component to the plan. The sun was setting as Racon ran from the barn to his house. His mother and father were waiting for him so they could start supper. He washed in the sink and then sat at the table. After a quick prayer, he dug in. Supper was always better after working hard all day, even if it was simple. After supper, Racon lit a candle and went up to his room. His mother had thrown open the window to let the cool evening air in, but tonight it was so hot that it didn't matter. He didn't bother changing clothes, and as soon as he heard his father snoring, he blew out his candle and climbed out the window, over the rooftop, and down the back porch. This was the third time Racon had snuck out. He didn't enjoy sneaking away from his parents, and if his father caught him, he would get the belt for sure, but he couldn't let them know what they had found. It was too dangerous. The moon was just coming up, and that made it easier to see, but Racon had run this path so many times he could do it blindfolded. He reached the tree line and jumped across the creek, but one foot landed short and his shoe instantly soaked through. He darted across a small opening and into a broken-down shed. Inside the shed, he grabbed an iron hook from the wall, scraped it along the floor until he caught an old iron hoop attached to the door. He pulled, and a bright light shined up, and he climbed down the ladder to the fruit cellar his friends had discovered and had turned into their fort. His 3 friends sat transfixed around a beige box. They didn't even notice Racon enter. Jason, a short, wiry boy, opened it and turned the switch. The record player came to life, and music echoed from its speaker. Joe jumped back and looked up at the hatch of the fruit cellar to ensure it was shut. Anna pushed her glasses closer to her eyes and was transfixed by the sound. Racon had never heard a record before. They were all hypnotized by the sound. Then suddenly Joe slammed the lid down and it stopped. "We can't play this too loud. If they hear, we are—" Joe was cut off by Anna. "They can't hear this. It doesn't broadcast. It's just sound waves here, not a radio." She opened the cover of the record player and started it up again, but turned the volume way down. "Where did you find it?" Racon said as he looked over the controls of the player. "The same place," Anna said with a smile. The 4 of them had discovered an abandoned house way out past the swamp south of town. It had boxes of books, records, and other forbidden technology from before the world went into hiding from they. And over the last few weeks, the kids had been bringing boxes to their hideout in the fruit cellar. The record ended, and Anna flipped to the B-side of The Dark Side of the Moon. Racon found a magazine in the pile of books and comics they had hauled out of the house last week. It was full of interesting stories about space, and on the cover it showed the timeline of events leading up to the Great Darkening. He flipped through and found an article and began reading. Racon read about the home computer and saw how it connected to all the other computers in the world by a cable or a network of cables, and people shared information with one another. As he flipped to the next page, he found more information on why the world went dark. Scientists had discovered other civilizations in a nearby star system and intercepted their transmissions. So they urged the United States government to start the space program and put a more powerful receiver on the moon. In secret, throughout the 1970s, they did just that and learned many things about the alien civilization and their technology. They learned things that put the information age into high gear. Then, all the alien signals went silent. When they pointed the Hubble telescope to the area, they found a destroyed star system. The other alien race consumed it completely using a giant energy-sucking ship, the article presumed. With this information, the population of Earth was told that alien life existed and it was hostile. The plan to hide the Earth began, and all the technology and infrastructure was dismantled and destroyed. Some countries fought it, but eventually everyone agreed, and the world set itself back to a time before the Industrial Revolution. All forms of transmission of radio waves, digital signals, were outlawed under the penalty of death. But Racon knew all this stuff from school and flipped the page again to see an ad for a desktop computer, and he imagined what it would be like to use one when Anna screamed. Anna wasn't overly dramatic, so it startled Racon. They all looked over and saw that in a box in the room's corner was a brand new computer. They all froze. "We gotta hook this up," Anna said. Over the next 2 months, whenever they could, the friends scoured the books and magazines and learned everything they could about how electronics worked. They searched the house and area around it and found an old battery and a lawnmower engine. They charged the battery using the lawnmower engine as a generator and alcohol as fuel. On one cold January night, they powered up the computer. It amazed everyone. Their reading and study had given them the basic idea of how it worked. Racon woke up one morning after a long night on the computer, and his father was standing over him. "Where have you been all night?" "I've been seeing Anna." His father's shoulders loosened, and a small smile showed, but only for a brief instant. "Anna?" he said in a questioning tone, then turned and walked out. And as he left, he said, "Use the damn front door from now on so you don't break your neck." Racon laid down on his bed, completely relieved. "What?" Anna yelled at Racon. "I'm sorry. It's the first thing I thought of. We can't get caught." Racon turned away from her and started playing the space game they had found on the computer, then softly said, "I'm supposed to have you come over for supper so my parents can meet you." Anna threw up her hands and stomped off. "When?" she said. "Tonight." They all sat, and Racon's father said the Lord's Prayer. Anna didn't know what to do, and while everyone had heads bowed and eyes closed, Racon showed her how to hold her hand, and he said, "Amen," really loud to cover for her because she didn't know it was coming. Racon's mother made his favorite, pot roast and boiled potatoes with gravy. Everyone ate in silence until Racon's father spoke up. "So, the spring dance is in a couple of weeks. I suppose you both are planning to go?" Racon coughed, and Anna kicked him hard under the table, smiled, then said, "Racon hasn't formally asked me yet." Racon's mother looked relieved until his father continued, "Come on now, Racon. What are you waiting for? You can sneak out every night and see Anna in secret, but you don't want to be seen in public with her?" "Yeah, Racon, you don't want anyone to know we are together," Anna said, and surprised Racon. Everyone was staring at him now. He slowly put down his glass, wiped his mouth with his napkin, and said, "Would you like to go to the spring dance with me, Anna?" Now it was Anna's turn to blush. They heard a loud bang from the front door. Everyone looked. The entire house shook as if there was an earthquake, and Racon's father ran towards the front door, but a gust of wind blasted it open. 2 men dressed funny with strange-looking rifles entered, and then a third man, older and fat, stepped in. The wind died down, and when it did, the fat man spoke. "We
are here for Anna and Racon.
Anna grabbed Racon's arm, and both knew they had been caught. "Should we run?" Anna said. Racon shook his head. The two walked towards the door and presented themselves. The fat man took off his glasses, wiped them furiously on his jacket, and then put them back on.
"You two are some very talented youngsters. Exactly who we are looking for."
Racon's mother and father looked over at them both. The fat man continued,
"You passed our test with flying colors. I might even say that your adaptability is off the charts."
Racon's father stepped forward.
"What's going on? You don't work at the school?" "No, sir, I do not. I work for the government, and your son is our newest recruit by passing our incredibly difficult entrance exam."
Racon's parents, along with Anna, all turned to look directly at Racon. Then the fat man concluded,
"And you too, Anna?"
The fat man explained that the house with the computer, books, magazines, and other supplies had been purposely put there to find candidates for a top-secret program, and that there were at least a dozen other houses like it scattered all around the world. But only Racon and his friends had managed to get so far as learning to use the computer and play games.
"I cannot tell you anything further,"
the fat man said to Racon's parents.
"Only that we are at a very critical time, and we need Racon and Anna to help save the world."
Stunned and silent, they stared at the fat man. The fat man gave them a few days to build their cover story. Anna and Racon were to tell their friends they planned to elope and run off to the city. Then he would pick them up in 4 days, and they could never return. It was very difficult for Racon's mother and father, but they contained their emotions the night Racon left. The wind blew hard, like the first night the fat man came to collect Racon. Racon's parents covered their faces from the wind as the strange craft lifted into the sky, then quietly and slowly went into their house, never to see Racon again. They sent Racon and Anna to separate training from Joe and Jason. Both teams would have the same mission but would be trained independently, and Racon and Anna would be the first to go. The fat man explained that the alien race, they, was devouring the resources of the galaxy and was on a direct course with Voyager 2, and that it had included a map of where the Sol system was located.
"We cannot let them find it."
Their mission is to travel deep into space using a starship designed using information gathered from an extinct alien race, capture Voyager 2, and destroy it. The mission would take their entire lives. The training was intense, but the alien spaceship was very easy to operate. The ship also had cryogenic chambers that would allow the two of them to sleep for long periods, extending their lives hundreds of years. They would send Joe and Jason 5 years after in a ship that was still under construction. They launched 2 years after leaving the farm, and the Earth and Moon quickly fell out of sight behind them. To reach the edge of the solar system, Anna and Racon had to navigate the ship for 6 months. But once they passed the Kuiper belt, they went into cryosleep. Racon woke. It took several hours for nausea to stop before he could climb out of the cryotube. Leaning against the walls, he slowly made his way to the galley. Sitting at the table, weeping, was Anna, although he barely recognized her. When they went into cryosleep, they were both 17 years old. But sitting at the table was a woman of about the age of 30. "Anna?" Racon said, startled at the sound of his own voice. He rubbed his face to find it covered in hair. "Yes, Racon, it's me. I suggest you eat something before you shave," Anna said, wiping the tears from her eyes. "We both seem to have aged a few years." She started crying again. He immediately went to her, not sure of what to do. He sat next to her like he always had. "Our entire life," was a waste, Racon. We gave up our entire youth for nothing. All of their data was wrong, she said as her voice turned from sorrow to anger.
Anna, I don't understand. What do you mean?
Racon said, putting his hand gently on hers. She pulled her hand away and stood up, walked directly to the computer console and pulled up the readouts of an alien ship. It's dead. And it has been for at least 1 billion years, she said bluntly and cold. Racon got up and checked over the data. It was all correct. No sign of energy or life of any kind for 999.7 million years. How could this be? All our training, the scans, it was way closer in time, Racon said, baffled. It was some sort of reflection. I woke a week ago, as planned, and after adjusting, I started my initial scans and found what I just showed you. I thought about waking you early, but I figured there must be some kind of mistake, or it was a decoy or something, she continued, talking fast and pacing. I ran every scan and calculation I could think of, searching for the answer. All I could find, and this sounds absolutely absurd, is that the information we had been scanning on Earth had bounced off the very edge of the universe itself. What? Was all Racon could muster. The nausea of the cryo-sleep was creeping in again, and he sat down on the floor. There is an edge, Racon, or a limit. It expands simultaneously with the expansion of the universe, but it is there, a place where existence meets non-existence, and somehow the data we got on Earth was reflected off of it. And that's why our calculations and all our data was wrong. Humanity has been hiding for no reason. Our perceived enemy was dead 1 billion years before we even existed. Anna sat next to Racon on the floor. We wasted our lives for nothing. For what seemed like hours, they just sat until finally Racon's body made him get up and eat. He ate quietly as Anna sat on the floor. After he finished eating, he looked at Anna and said, "It wasn't for nothing. We have been put into this universe for a divine purpose. We are not here by accident. Our entire life has been orchestrated by God Himself. Everything from having the brains to figure out that computer in the old house to this very moment. We have a purpose, and that purpose may have yet to be fully revealed to us, but it is there. He meant for us to discover this massive truth, you and I." Racon slowly walked over to Anna and stretched out his hand. Anna took his hand and stood. "I know you aren't a believer, but I am. And I know God has worked in my life and has revealed Himself to me sufficiently to give me huge faith in Him, even in this crazy moment." "But Racon," Anna interrupted, "we will lose our lives. It will take us twice as long to return to Earth. We will die in our cryotubes before we get there. We have wasted our entire existence." "You are right, Anna. We cannot go back to that life. It's over for us there. But we are here now. There is a ship out there with technology that we have yet to understand. We cannot go back, but we can go forward to wherever the Lord's providence takes us, and we'll have to do it the hard way, alone, and with just the wits and courage He gave us." Racon smiled. "Now come on. We have a lot of work to do."